is up, y'all? I am Paige Cunin. This is the BR Ranking Show presented by UKG. I am joined by my No Puns Allowed podcast co-host and national college football writer for Bleacher Report, Adam Kramer. And Kramer, we have made it to the midway point of the season. Week 7 is complete. 7 top 25 teams lost. How you feeling?
Tired, excited, tired, all of the emotions. Yeah, like fall is setting in. The college football playoff rankings are a couple of weeks away, the first ones,
Yes, we're
right?
so close.
And this week that we just saw felt that way because you have some teams that we're going to talk about whose seasons ended officially, right? And
Yes.
we've got more coaching changes today. We've got more to come. And then you've got other teams, a team like Indiana, who it feels like their season is just beginning, quite honestly, in the most amazing way possible. So a lot of emotions, a lot of you mentioned it before we started, terrible officiating. We get that out of the way right
Yeah.
now. A lot of coaches mad at just about everything. Yeah, we got everything yesterday, and we got more of it obviously coming up next week as well.
Yes, so we will bring you guys the AP poll as soon as it drops, but let's start with a team who is certainly not going to be featured in this. You mentioned coaching changes. There's reports that there is a conversation around Penn State, James Franklin, and what is to happen. He could get fired while we're on this show. Do you think that happens this quickly? Do you think they wait it out? Obviously, a lot of other things have factored. Drew Aller going out, being done for the season, and his career being done at Penn State. All of those things. What is kind of the most important part of this that you want to hone in on?
Yeah, the noise is getting louder, and this is it. This is it for Penn State. That was a demoralizing loss. We'll talk about Drew Aller. The business components of this are as follows. Penn State owes him a lot of money. They're going to
Yes.
negotiate a middle ground settlement for him to probably step aside. And you know what? I think it's right for all parties, right? Like Penn State fans have had enough. I imagine James Franklin has had enough too, right? And like all parties probably just need to break up at this point. So I think it's imminent. I don't know if it's going to be today. This is a pretty complicated deal. It's a lot of money
Yes.
in hand. And I wanted to talk with you because we were talking before the show. Obviously, the shell shock of Penn State's season ending the way it has these last 3 weeks is bad. Drew Aller's season ending how it did, his college career ending how it did. Look, we've been critical of the play, maybe the decision to go with him over the quarterback you had on the roster last year. That's heartbreaking to see a season and a college career end like that. That was yeah. So there's the human element, there's the business side, but the human element is really tough right now.
Yeah, it's brutal. And I think we were talking about this beforehand. Like, I watched the video of James Franklin hugging his daughter in the tunnel after. I watched him standing on the field, sort of looking around and taking it all in, not really moving. And then you have to think that he is really upset about the Drew Aller situation because, again, this is the guy that he chose to go with. There's so many guys on that roster that chose to come back to make this the like all in season.
Yep.
And I think that's the business part, of course, that you're like, okay, it didn't work out this way. I think we talked a lot in the offseason about how there was this Ohio State blueprint. We saw, the $20 million roster that we heard about and the coaching staff, investing in your coaching staff and bringing guys in. They did that. They took, Knowles from Ohio State to make this happen. So James Franklin did all the right things in terms of what he was supposed to do and changes he was supposed to make to sort of move this forward. It just didn't pan out. And I think that's the part that we're going to start to see become more normal, I think, in college football when there is a lot of parity. We've talked about a lot of other college football teams, and you'll see them here in this top 25. There are a lot of brands in here that you probably weren't thinking you would see in the top 25, but because of the state of college football, NIL, transfer portal, all those things, we do get to see that. So we do have the AP poll dropped. So Indiana at 3. Okay. We've got Texas A&M moving up. Look at, we've got risers in here. Some down a few spots for tough games. Kramer, anything noticeable off the bat that you want to talk about?
I thought Indiana would climb to 2. I really did. I thought Indiana would make its case for 2. I think they should be number 2. I get that Miami is doing well, but I thought Indiana would be the number 2 team. So that's a little surprising out of the gate.
Yeah, let's talk about Texas and Oklahoma. Texas in the top 25. Oklahoma, John Mateer returns, but maybe not the best option. I'm assuming they thought it was going to be a lot easier of a return there. But what were your takeaways from that game specifically?
Uh, It was ugly as we thought it might. I thought Texas
Oh,
played a really good game.
sorry to interrupt you, but James Franklin was fired. I just want to break that news right now. James Franklin has been fired from Penn State.
So
So,
James Franklin, like it's official right now.
yeah,
I feel like whenever
breaking
we do a
news.
podcast, it's always right after the podcast. So here we are. James
Yeah,
Franklin is gone. Now, all right, let's lead into this for just a moment.
yes.
We talked about Penn State, but when you actually revisit the expectations of this team, what they we thought they would be, your point about the financial investment, all the
Yeah.
players that they got back, we are less than 2 months into the season, and he is now fired. So, I mean, college football moves fast now, right? And another team we're not talking about, Florida State.
Yes.
Like when you invest this much in college football and you fall short, like these are the ramifications of like big business, and college football is big business now. But still, I am amazed that this happened as quickly as it did. Although I don't know if they had any other choice. Wow.
They don't. They didn't have any other choice because they really were patient with him. And I will say more patient than the fans, more patient than the statistics. I think we've seen so many graphics and so many videos done over the last couple of weeks of how much, James Franklin has lost those big games. And I think it's funny because a lot of times we convince ourselves that this is not going to happen because there's so much money involved. There is no amount of money. There are so many colleges and universities paying coaches not to coach their football teams. They will find money
Yeah.
to make this happen. We obviously don't know if there was some sort of a negotiation. I'm assuming not
Yeah.
because really, I mean, if you're James Franklin, what's the point? Yes, you underperformed, but again, there's no real leverage there for Penn State. But what happens now? What do you try and make of this season, and how do you sort of go about finding your next head coach? Because we know that starts now. As much as
Yeah.
people want to say it starts in the offseason, it starts now.
And it probably started a week or two ago, truly, to
Yeah.
survey the landscape. I mean, that's how it works. So what happens now is you take a breath. You obviously, what's really interesting though, you mentioned the money invested. So you've got like Jim Knowles, who I think whoever they hire would probably stay around. It has not been
Yeah.
great, but you've got a premier
Yes.
defensive coordinator, and you're probably not going to want to pay him whatever the buyout would be there, which is essentially like a head coach buyout. So you take
Mhm.
a breath. This is a tremendous job. I know it doesn't look
Yes.
like it in this moment. It is a premier job across college football. The candidates list is going to be robust. It's going to go, you're going to have NFL names, you're going to have college football names. This is a job that doesn't open very often, a quality of job. So if you're a team that's thinking about firing a coach and looking for to be in the front of the line, you got to take a pause for a minute because Penn State is obviously going to be one that we're talking about for quite some time. So, yes, it's not shocking, Paige, but it still feels shocking when you just gather just how we got here.
Yeah.
That's the part that I can't get past. It's been 7 weeks, and what a change for Penn State fans to think national championship to now. It's
Yeah.
truly unbelievable.
Someone in the chat actually said Penn State can't do better than James Franklin. I think that like mentality, it's like we have that for a lot of teams. Like I think like Texas, Florida, like some people like there's a lot of coaches where they're like, hey, I don't think we can do better than this. Obviously, he needs to show
What
the
is
winning
James
part.
Franklin? I was gonna say, like, I don't even think he's a
But
bad coach, but do Franklin do better in the sense that you could kind of win games you weren't supposed to win? Like, I look, let's be honest
yes,
here. This was the narrative, but there's some reality to the narrative that he
yes.
underperformed.
That's
So, yeah, I disagree with
That's
that.
the point is that like, well, no, I think that was you can justify that for only so long. And I think this was the part where you can't justify that for any longer. I think it was pretty obvious to us even after the Oregon game. I don't know. You were saying this all season, like it didn't look right from the very beginning. Penn State
Yes.
season, like them losing to UCLA and Northwestern really isn't that shocking if you've
No.
watched them since the beginning when they were playing nobodies. No offense to their early schedule. That was rude. But it's more just like, hey, we knew this wasn't working from the beginning. It just was too much. They're going to get someone in here that probably can make, like to your point, this is a great place to go play, and a great place to coach. The finances are clearly there,
They'll
and
be
I'm
there.
going to
Yes.
say it over and over again. There's always money. There's always money out there. Some people, yeah, see Franklin gone. I think a lot of people again knew that this was going to be a thing. Needs to go for an OC. Is that what someone said? Sorry, the
Yes.
chat's moving quickly.
Oh yeah.
We do, yeah, we do need to acknowledge that this is a huge deal because again, he's been there forever. What, since 2014? So like
Penn State is an underdog
Its
to
identity. Yeah.
Iowa next weekend, right?
Yeah.
Like look how far we've come. But again, this happens. You have to. I think Penn State. It's funny getting onto the show and saying, well, maybe it won't happen that fast. It happens 5 minutes later. So
Literally, yeah.
I'm wrong about that. But I do think from a moving forward standpoint, you've lost your quarterback. Your season is over. Why wait? Why wait? And this also tells me James Franklin was probably eager to look. He he think about being him and what he's heard over the last couple of years, right? Like you can't. He
Yes.
has. It's his job. This is what comes with that big salary, so he's used to it. I have to imagine there's got to be a huge amount of relief to be over this, given what the last month has looked like for him. So, but
Yes.
make no mistake about it. Penn State is going to be probably highly ranked, hugely coveted job. Like you said, big pockets. This team will be fine. But finding the right person, given all of the instability, going to be really, really important.
Yeah, there's also some rumors around their athletic director and some of the changes being made. So just also part of it, like hopefully this doesn't turn into an athletic department sort of
Oof.
disaster type thing. And that might be why Franklin is pretty quick to be like, all right, I know that there's no real room here. Just let me go and take my money and we'll do that. Also, the chat, you guys, I love the chat every week in this on the show. Somebody said James Franklin's going to get hired at UCLA. That'd be kind of hilarious. Obviously a joke, but you really never know in college
No,
football. You really don't. But yeah, I think James Franklin officially fired by Penn State, just so
wow.
everyone knows who is joining us a little bit late. So
Big
crazy
news.
to
I
think that it
guess.
happened fast. I mean, I'm like slightly shocked that it happened this quickly, just because again, you have a team that you could like wait it out, kind of figure out the financial situation. But it sounds like it was bad enough and needed to happen. But the expectations part of this is huge. I do want to sort of transition a little bit into the AP poll and talk about a team you mentioned along with this, which was Florida State. So Florida State losing this week. A bit of, again, we reacted really big when they beat Alabama. They're a little bit, fumbling now, stumbling through Norvell. Obviously, a topic of conversation has been his job since last season. Thoughts on that, and also just the similarities between like going all in financially and putting so much money into whether it be transfer portal or coaching staff, and then having it really fall short. And we're only at the midway point of the season.
Yeah, the only difference between the two, at least outwardly, was expectations. Penn State was preseason number
Yes.
two. Florida State we knew would be better. I think Florida State was also a product of their own early success. That game against Alabama uh, was lied to us, told us that this was a team that was capable of competing. They found their quarterback, they found their offensive coordinator, the defense was better, and it's really fallen apart. Now, I understood losing to Virginia. I actually understood like the first two losses. This is the one where things start to spiral. So externally, not as big as expectations. Internally, though, you're right. Huge investments being made at that program, facilities, NIL. They can't be happy. Now, I don't know exactly what Norvell's buyout is. Maybe the chat can help, but it's big. It's really, really big. So if you're ready to do that, and I don't think that one's going to come as quick, you're going to really have to pony up for it. So, but another situation page, like huge investment, money being attached to this beyond the salaries of the coaches and the assistants. And now what do the people that are supporting it do? And I think they're inclined to make a move if they can, to write a big check if they have to, just to say we're not happy with the current state of things.
Yeah. By the way, some names in the chat that I want to acknowledge for this Penn State job.
Love
We've
this
got
game.
Ed Ogeron out there. We've got a Jimbo Fisher. Speaking of coaches being paid a lot of
I
money not to coach teams. And then the other one that I actually really liked was Joe Brady. All right.
Yes. Jimbo's an interesting one. Probably not going to be terribly popular. We're talking about Florida
Yeah.
State right now, but knows
Yes.
knows the product of running the business, like the big programs in college football. I actually think there could be worse. There are worse candidates than that. Brady, of course, would be fascinating. It's just like the
Does he
economic
want to
portion of
coach?
exactly. Does he want to
Does he
do
want to
this thing?
coach in college
We
football?
we
I
know
mean, he
him.
was
We've covered him. He was
yeah,
pretty
the first
blatant.
step of hey, national championship. See you later. Bye.
Uh,
Gone.
but also, I think in this era, like there's not going to be like this natural list of candidates where people are like, yes, that makes sense. Like you want to throw around Dan Lanning, You're going to throw like this is what we're going to do. This is not just hiring
We
and
got to
firing
stop throwing around
season.
Dan Lanning.
This is the get your clients raises season, right? Agents love this stuff because it means more money for their clients who are probably going to stay exactly where they are.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
great,
What a
great
wild
points. But
day.
just what a wild day. That is kind of crazy. But let's talk a little bit more about top 25. You got cut off a little bit because obviously this news broke. But let's talk about Texas and Oklahoma. We
Yes.
know John Mateer played not a pretty game. Also, I want to talk about the arch of it all because I think that's super important. Where Sark said this in his post-game press conference, when we lose, it's really all about that Arch didn't do enough. And then when we win, it should be about Arch, but it's not. And so, thoughts on Texas and maybe a little bit more Texas than Oklahoma. And we can talk about Oklahoma after.
Yeah, this is a really nice win. I thought Arch played a nice game. Not
Yes.
spectacular, but really good against a good defense, right? So, for as much conversation as we've had about his mechanics and what he doesn't do, what we see here, the way that he was able to move around, the way that he's able to extend plays, I mean, kind of getting his own version of Mateer, right? Like
Yeah.
I thought this was very, very clean, statistically lined up very well. Look, we're going to rip Texas when they lose. We got to at least be able to compliment them to put things back on the rails. And this is the part of his game that I do think I'd like to see more of, by the way, is more design runs versus him scrambling.
I thought you were referring to the video that was just shown of him waving to these Sooner
I
fans.
love that too. Like,
But we said this a couple weeks ago when he like flexed over Sam Houston. We were like, you know what? Let him do it.
let
Just
him
like
do
give
it.
it. Maybe we need that from him because he's usually always saying the right thing. Maybe we need a little bit of fire. But I think yes, you can take this as a positive. Obviously, Oklahoma not playing great. John Mateer, 3 interceptions, didn't look fully himself. This Oklahoma team, we knew their schedule was going to be sort of a gauntlet in general going forward. We figured maybe they could survive a little bit without Mateer. But do you think there's still some hope for Oklahoma in terms of going forward and maybe regrouping and getting Mateer back in maybe a better rhythm?
I wonder what if we're in those conversations with what is Mateer's current state. Um, like I'd like to know where he's at physically, right? Because it didn't look
Yeah.
right. The pieces weren't there. Yes, I don't think all hope is lost. They just lost their first game, and they've won some big ones already. But Paige, that gauntlet is real. And I think when you look at who you still have to play, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, three of those road games, Missouri, LSU, this is where the fun begins. And from what we saw yesterday offensively, and I gave you some numbers before the game. We talked about it. Oklahoma, 45th in the country offensively. Not all that much better than Texas. They're going to have to
Yes.
find a way to manufacture more with material without them.
Now it is time for our new segment, When Works Works, presented by UKG HR Pay and Workforce Management. Visit ukg.com/work to learn more. So when it works, you move up in the rankings. And Adam, a team that you were very excited to hear is our biggest riser, is Indiana with up 4 spots.
They,
Go
sh-
ahead. The floor is yours. You were so excited yesterday watching this
I
team.
am. I'm really excited. And I'll be honest, I wasn't overwhelmingly excited coming into the season, but they have played great. They are a big riser, my biggest riser. My only complaint is they should have risen one more. That being said, here's what was impressive. Held Oregon to just 267 yards of offense, and they did it on the road. We saw Mendoza play a really good game, turn the ball over, pick six there. They had some penalties. This should have been more than a 10-point deficit, I thought. And I'm sure their head coach probably is not happy about that because he looks frankly a little gruff all the time, but he's got to be happy with where they are. And Paige, the biggest thing for me, like let's lose the Cinderella label for Indiana. I know the logo on the side of the head, that's what we're going to want to do. Metric wise, they kind of stack up in pretty much every area. And you want to see Ohio State is the number one team in the country. I'm cool with that. I get that. I think Indiana has a legitimate case to be 1A or 2, and they've got no real holes. So I'm happy to see that I was wrong heading into the year. I'd love to see them up one more spot. We'll see if that happens here over the next few weeks.
Another team rising 5 spots is South Florida, a team we haven't talked about, I feel like, in a couple weeks, hanging around, obviously, college football playoff, the big implication for them. They have a big one against Memphis in 2 weeks. Their margin of victory, by the way, has just been like a billion. Feels like also Texas Tech, we will get to you as well. Those two teams to me really stand out in terms of, hey, we're proving that we still are relevant. And despite the fact that Texas Tech hasn't lost, they're still not getting that respect. But South Florida, I do think, is going to continue. Also, by the way, Alex Golish, another name that was thrown out in the chat for the Penn State role. But a team that just quietly just needs to take care of business. Don't overlook the fact that you've got, Memphis in 2 weeks. Be ready to play. And I honestly think this is the team that we're going to get in the college football playoff out of the group of 5 or group of 6.
I bet North Texas on Friday, and
Ooh,
they gave
why?
up 63 points. So I have no further comment on this time, other than when South Florida plays their ball, and really it does start with their quarterback. They're really tough to guard against. I mean, we've seen it against Power Four teams. We certainly saw it on Friday night. I'm with you, like that. It's fun to see them kind of hang around, right? It's fun to see that group of 5 competition start just as the college football playoff discussion starts to get going.
Yeah, so we do have our biggest faller, of course, is Oklahoma. They moved down 8 spots. Oregon, on the flip side of the Indiana hype, down 5 spots. I mean, obviously, we thought that the outcome was going to be different when we did predictions. Maybe underestimated Kurt Signetti in a way that he was wanting us to nationally. But not all hope is lost in terms of Oregon. I kind of think I said this to an Oregon fan this week. I almost think losing during the regular season benefits them. Like, let's try something new. Let's not run the table
Mhm.
and then get embarrassed, as you go in. Something I do want to note about the Indiana Oregon head to head is that when it comes to the Big Ten and going to the title game, there is a situation where if Indiana loses to Ohio State and doesn't actually make the championship game, it doesn't matter. They can still be eligible in terms of head to head for that bye that first week because it no longer goes to conference champions. It's just highest ranked in that. So
Yes.
that's assuming that they Oregon gets to the championship game and loses to Ohio State there. So there are college football playoff implications about the schedule and all of that, or your preference in terms of bowl for these teams during the season, which I think is really interesting because of the new change of the college football playoff.
Oregon's remaining schedule is fairly favorable, right? Rutgers,
Yes.
Wisconsin, who's a dumpster fire. They play at Iowa. It's a long trip, kind of a weird game. Minnesota, USC, which could be really, really intriguing. Then at Washington, which unfortunately Oregon fans don't want to talk about what that game has been because it's not been great. Still, when you compare it to some of the other teams out there, especially SEC teams, it's not too bad. So that is a loss. It's a big loss, but it's a good loss. On the flip side, that Penn State win is all of a sudden not great, right? It's not as good as it was resume wise. So what we
Yeah.
felt was a huge resume boost. Now maybe not so much as Penn State is looking for a new head coach. So this is the game when it gets in the college football playoff. I think to your point, Oregon's still very much firmly in the mix. Balanced team. I didn't think Dante Moore had his best game. He'll play better. They'll be fine.
Let's talk about the rest of the Big Ten that fell either out of the top 25 or is waiting to get in. And I saw this from the chat earlier. And leave that game up there. I want to talk about that. Illinois is the first out, then Michigan, then Washington. Something in the chat said Washington not getting the respect they deserve. I agree. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. I totally agree. I think Michigan or Washington is being very much disrespected as part of the conversation because of that loss to Ohio State. But any thoughts on
I,
Washington and why they maybe aren't in yet?
I think when you look at who they've beaten, and I think they're one of the best 25 teams in college football. So they've beaten Washington State, they've beaten Maryland, they've beaten Rutgers. The Maryland win wasn't all that impressive. So like there's some work still here to do. The good news for Washington fans, or depending on how you look at it, you've got Michigan, you've got Illinois here, and then you've got games that you should win before you end with Oregon. So I thought they played Ohio State really tough. I thought that game couple of plays here and there is a lot closer. You and I talked about that game a lot before and after the fact. So no,
Mhm.
they're not. They're definitely one of the best 25 teams in college football. I
Yeah.
wouldn't disagree with that.
Why do you think that Nebraska is getting the nod over them? I'm looking at
It's
their.
well, like For starters,
I guess
Nebraska lost
Cincinnati.
at the right time. Exactly.
Yeah,
Nebraska lost at the
Cincinnati.
right time, and I think ultimately that makes a difference. Um, I agree with you. When you look at Nebraska's and by the way, shout out to Matt Rule. I know we're talking about why they shouldn't be ranked. I'll say if you're a Nebraska fan, and I know plenty, they got to be thrilled with this because it's been certainly a bit of a long road. And you actually, when you look at Nebraska and wonder, gosh, that Michigan game that they could have won, offensive line was a mess. You could be looking at an unbeaten team right now. As is, I think they'll take this. They've had some close games the last few weeks, but probably thrilled to be ranked once again.
Let's talk about Utah. They beat up on a beat up Arizona
Yes.
State. Okay, so Arizona State not starting Sam Levitt, um, struggling a bit after kind of regrouping after their Mississippi State loss. But this is kind of big for the Big 12 in general. And Kramer, one of the biggest takeaways I have from this week is that in terms of the ACC and the Big 12, their playoff teams, like there could be some serious like fight between who actually makes the college football playoff and how many teams, because we know only really one of them is going to probably get multiple teams in.
Yes.
Um, and Utah very much still in that conversation, has a big game coming up against BYU, but definitely still in the hunt. An impressive win, regardless of the fact that they're playing a banged up Arizona State.
I mean, right now, doesn't it feel like the Big 12 in that matchup has a sizable advantage, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes.
do you have more confidence in the Big 12 or the ACC? It's not was my intended to rip on the ACC. I think Florida State hurts it. I think they've, obviously, but the Big 12 has been chaos, right? Iowa State, who, we talked about last week, was in the mix, played week
Mhm.
zero, looked like one of the best teams in college football. Poof, gone, right? So we've seen a lot of movement. I do think Utah is still a threat. We saw them lose to Texas Tech, but Texas Tech might just be really, really good. And if that's the case, there might be room for both.
Yeah, and I think in the ACC, the fans are probably saying, "Hey, wait, we've got Georgia Tech and we've got Virginia." And both of those teams have pretty favorable schedules. Obviously, Georgia Tech will play Georgia at the end of the regular season, which will be a big factor if they play them close. I think that helps their case a bit. But in the case of Virginia, they don't really have that tough of a schedule for the rest of the year. They play Washington State at home, at UNC, at Cal, versus Wake, at Duke, and then Virginia Tech at
Ugh,
home.
goodness.
I know. So I
Is that
mean,
good or
the
bad?
the
I guess it's
tiebreaker,
good. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know what to like. No, I mean,
Yeah.
you can't. They have their schedule. There's not much they can do about it other than play a better out of conference slate. But
Yes.
yeah, good for them. I mean, playoff Virginia might be a real thing.
It could be. It could be. That's the best part of this is that at this point in time, there's still a lot open in those two conferences. I think obviously SEC and Big Ten starting to take shape a bit. And I think that's part of why we like that. But let's talk about the SEC. Where do you want to start? Because next week we obviously have a couple matchups. But what teams this week did you want to talk about in the
I,
SEC in the top
well,
25?
we could start at 4-5 because I think you had two teams with very two unique results in
Hmm.
A&M and Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss in the madness of yesterday, like barely survived a game that they should have been dominant in. I think Texas A&M continues to look like one of the more complete teams in college football. And as Marcel Reed goes, so do they. But I think the defense played well against Florida. They're being tested too, Paige. Like their schedule has not been easy. Obviously, the win over Notre Dame, where they had to put up 40 points to do so. I just like the battle tested optics of what they do. Now, you want Reed to be more consistent as a passer, but you also want him to be himself, which is when they're most dangerous. I just think the more we see of this team, the more I like.
Yeah. I will point to the fact that Ole Miss did move down a spot after their close game. Lane Kiffin not very happy with that. But let's talk Georgia and LSU. I'll start with LSU because though they won their game, it was not pretty.
No.
I think their offense is still really struggling. I'm curious if we think that they are still college football playoff material. Their schedule obviously features some good matchups that we'll be able to sort of tell, but I'm worried that it hasn't turned around just yet. Even though they did get that win, it still felt like, oh, this is still not pretty and not what we sort of saw maybe week one.
You look at the offense, right? Okay, 17-10 winner over Clemson. 20-10 winner over Florida. Really good defense. They scored 19 points against Ole Miss. They scored 20 yesterday. And they're doing it with the quarterback that many were thinking Heisman, number one overall pick. Like the pieces just don't feel quite right. Now, look, I guess the good news is we are going to find out really fast if this is who they are. And I think this is who they are. Their defense is a lot better
Yeah.
than it was. The offense is not the group that we thought we were getting. Vanderbilt on the road, Texas A&M at Alabama, the close at Oklahoma. So the thing about these SEC schedules, you can't hide. Like we will know
You
who
can't.
you are by the end. Like this is not Virginia. I'm sorry, Virginia fans, but it's not. Like we will figure out how good or bad this team actually is. I will say I'm very impressed with how the defense has played. It is light years different than it's been here over the last 2, 3 years.
All right, let's talk about Georgia because the chat mentioned something that I also very much want to talk about. This Georgia Auburn game was the one of the more terribly
Gross.
officiated and gross football games we've ever watched. Specifically, Kirby convincing the refs that he did not call a timeout when indeed he did call a timeout and it was not clapping. But we've talked about this Auburn team quite a bit in terms of like, okay, they've had a really tough schedule. They played decent non-conference as well. And they really did have potential. That game was certainly in their reach, but what do you make of Georgia's performance in that environment and kind of the composure that came? Look at the Kirby Smart celebrating Georgia's next five-star commitment, clapping.
I
Oh, that's so good.
I I I don't know what to make of Georgia. This
Me
is a
neither.
really interesting team, right? From the Tennessee game to the Alabama game, they're fine against Kentucky. And obviously, this is the game they should have been down big in. They were down double digits,
Hmm.
should have been down more. Now, they are resilient. I will say that. But this is a team that clearly has some holes. And again, the schedule, Ole Miss, Florida, even at Mississippi State, like there's a lot to be determined. They're just not as explosive as I thought they'd be, Paige, because all those weapons that they added,
Yeah.
obviously change at quarterback. It's not looking quite right yet. They're finding ways to win, albeit ugly ways to win. And by the way, if you're an Auburn fan, like I'm sorry. That's all I have to say. I'm just sorry. There are new and exciting ways to lose Auburn football games every single week. That's bad.
That was brutal. I'm not gonna lie to you. Georgia Ole Miss is next week. I know we can still talk about this week a little bit, but I'm curious your thoughts on that game, especially after watching Ole Miss struggle this week.
I like that is one, and we'll pull up a spread here just to see what they think. Like that is that's a hugely important game, by the way, because in terms of the optics, Georgia right now is a 7-point favorite in that game. So I would lean Georgia in a little bit of a
Mhm.
bounce back, especially with the environment. But both teams just having wins still kind of licking their wounds, such is life in the SEC.
Yeah, it is brutal. Do you have the spread there?
7. Yeah, it's a touchdown
Seven?
spread. So
Okay.
we'll see where that goes. So Georgia's 7-point
Georgia at
favorite.
home.
Feels about right, but it's still a sizable number. More faith in Georgia, I think, than maybe some we're gonna assume they have after yesterday.
Let's go to the chat's two favorite teams to say they're overrated because they play this next week. USC and Notre Dame. This is a huge game for both of these teams. USC getting a big win versus Michigan. I loved the Lincoln Riley post-game presser. That was a Big Ten physical game, which was true. They won it in a fashion that we sort of don't expect from USC. I was happy because we did predictions, Kramer, earlier this week, and I said I wanted to pick USC so bad. I couldn't do it. You did it. I couldn't bring myself to do it with that defense and seeing that performance against Illinois. I was really nervous. But USC, obviously, one of the big hurdles for Notre Dame to get to the college football playoff. Where do you think this leans? I think I'm going to lean Notre Dame just because of the fact that I feel like they've played pretty well since their first two games of the season, but I'm curious your thoughts.
I have two thoughts. Well, first, a spread. Notre Dame is an 8.5-point favorite, early going.
Wow.
Big number. Big number. It's at home. I like that this rivalry has some juice. Second, I agree. I lean Notre Dame, and I think we have to at least start talking about the fact that Notre Dame is getting all the necessary help it needs to play its way into the conversation for
Yes.
the college football playoff. It's going to make people very mad. Their resume is
Yes.
going to be a bit of a mixed bag, a lot of a mixed bag. If that chase is going to continue, this is probably going to be the best win that they're going to have. In fact, when you look at the rest of the schedule, USC, Boston College, Navy, Pitt, They just won a game. Syracuse and Stanford. Yee. They got to have this one, and not only do they have to have it, Paige, I think they have to win convincingly, right? This is style
Yeah.
point season already if you're Notre Dame.
No, you need it. And to your point, the people are going to be mad because I think with the college football playoff, everyone's biggest thing is that they're not in a conference. And I've been saying for quite some time, they will not join one until they are forced. And
Absolutely.
unfortunately, we need people, we need the conference commissioners to get together and lay out which schedules are going to make easy and not have their teams beat up on each other. And speaking of that, Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama looked pretty good against Missouri. Still had some moments. By the way, give Caden Proctor his flowers right now because that is the most fun thing to watch ever. You see it about to happen and you just get so excited. Tennessee stumbled a bit too in their game this last week, but so I'm leaning Alabama on this one. I feel like they're going to continue to roll, but does Tennessee have a shot here at the upset?
I think they have a shot. Obviously, a very emotional game. Alabama, 8.5 point favorite here, though. Another 8.5 point spread to start. It's a pretty big number for two teams ranked as highly as they are. Not quite sure what to make of Tennessee. I'm just not. I mean, it's a team that's found ways to win largely. That's really good news. That spread speaks volumes. I would lean early on Crimson Tide.
Yes. And then we've got Washington at Michigan, which I think is a very underrated game. Pay attention. I sort of like Washington in this game, but Michigan's at home. So I don't know. What is the line there? Do you got it?
6.5 points. 6.5 points for Michigan. So that's a nice bounce
That's
back.
respect.
Yeah. And I
That is
think when you have
respect.
these long road trips, there's a lot to figure out. I got to be honest, as someone who lives in Big Ten country, still conference games like these, I'm not used to this like being normal yet, that this is a conference game. I kind of like the fact that it is. I'm with you on this Washington team. I think they're complete. The question is, what are we going to get from that Michigan defense and what are we going to get from that Michigan running game?
Yeah. And if I'm saying nice things about Washington, I really mean it. What else do we got this week? LSU Vanderbilt.
I know
That's going to be
I
a
know
weird game.
we
That's
just
going to be a
talked-
weird game of football. I'm just letting you all know now.
Yeah, it is. Vandy is a 1.5 point favorite right now, right? Vanderbilt's favored over LSU. Both teams are ranked. Very, very interesting. I just have more faith in Vanderbilt. Like, I don't know. There's no
So do
deep
I.
analytics dive. I've got more faith in Vandy's quarterback. I thought they played a pretty game effort against Alabama. I think their defense is better than we thought it would be. I don't know if I trust LSU. That's a fascinating game and a fascinating spread attached.
Yes, absolutely. It is going to be a big week of college football. Kramer, any parting thoughts on this top 25? I do want to mention James Franklin has been fired at Penn State. So we broke that news on this show earlier, but wanted to let everyone know that he is in fact fired. So Penn State will be moving on this season with another coach. So we will see.
I'll give the team that I give love every single week that just kind of chugging along, BYU. Now,
Hey,
bit of a sensitive one
personal attack.
for the Arizona fan in attendance, but BYU over the course of 2 years has found really odd ways to win. But you watch this team, I feel like they deserve a little bit more respect. That now, granted, almost losing like that is probably why they're not getting it. But I love the way this team plays. And as we talked about the Big 12 versus the ACC, they're a team obviously we have to factor in. So
yes,
shout out to BYU, shout out to Georgia Tech, Virginia, some of the other teams just hanging
give me
around.
Texas Tech.
Cincinnati.
Give me Texas Tech. Give me Texas Tech. Their margin of victory is the best in the country. I know everyone's gonna say, "Oh, they haven't played anybody. Oh, they haven't played anybody." They're going to go undefeated. I just feel it. That is a crazy defense. Their offense feels it. That environment insane. So I'm gonna give my end of show love to Texas Tech because I feel like us giving the Big 12 some love here because again. They don't get much in terms of respect, but Texas Tech is above Oregon. The undefeated record still there. Obviously not above Alabama because Alabama's beat better teams, and same with Ole Miss and stuff. But we will get there eventually. But that is your BR ranking show presented by UKG. For Paige and Adam, we will talk to you guys next week. because we've been talking about it for so